Hey everybody, Matt and Greg here. Heilman and Haver in the mix on the road, coming to you from Western Washington Center for the Arts, WWCA. So we took the opportunity to do a screening of the film Mank tonight here in the largely empty theater. And we're going to do a little in the mix. We're going to talk about the film and maybe give you some recommendations, some insight, maybe a little tiny preview of the movie review for Mank.
Yeah, not necessary to enjoy the movie Mank, I don't think, but certainly helpful as far as the history goes to watch the movie Citizen Kane. And the cocktail that Greg's going to prepare is tied in with that. See if you can guess how. It's called the Rosebud. So for those of you who don't know, Rosebud is I guess they call it a MacGuffin. It's an item in a movie that has a significance to the plot, but isn't always understood. So we're not going to give anything away for those of you who haven't seen Citizen Kane. Arguably the greatest film ever made. Orson Welles obviously directing and also starring. And the movie Mank centers on Herman Mankiewicz, who was the writer of the original screenplay. And there was some controversy between him and Welles about who was truly responsible for the film, but we'll get into that a little later. So
yeah, and what's interesting from going into this film, you watch Citizen Kane, and if you, I'd really be interested to see, and if someone is watching this and never saw Citizen Kane without knowing what the Rosebud reference was, I would love to know that, because going into Citizen Kane, and Matt and I both just watched it in the last week ourselves, just to refresh ourselves before watching Mank, knowing what we knew what Rosebud was going into it.
Yep.
If someone out there never knew what Rosebud was going into the film and watched it, I'd love to see what your take is on that. But you know, Citizen Kane, the story is probably the less interesting part of the film to me. So it was interesting going into Mank to see what the background was on creating the story, because it definitely was a unique story, even though it may have been, you know, overshadowed by some of the lighting and some of the cinematography and things like that. But that aside, we're going to do a Rosebud.
yeah, what's going into this Rosebud?
All right,
We know that for sure.
So for this, we are doing 2 ounces of grapefruit juice, and I'm going to make
Fresh grapefruit juice.
I'm going to make a mess here
Spare no expense.
and take the seeds out into each glass. We start out with that. So you know what? Looks like there's about 2 ounces for each half of the grapefruit here. So I'm just going to go right into that.
And obviously Citizen Kane is one of those movies that has been lauded as one of, if not the best, for years, since it came out in 1941. It's been a long time, and a lot of people feel very strongly about the film. A lot of people feel that it's a lot of hype, and we'd love to get your guys' take. So join us on social media. You can email us at heilmanandhaver@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your take on the hype surrounding Citizen Kane. Has it aged well? Is it still relevant? Certainly there's themes of humanity and love and hate in the film that we can all relate to, no matter what era we're watching the film in. But I'm interested to see the new life that the movie Mank will breathe into Citizen Kane, because I think people will watch this and then go, hey, I better go back and watch the original.
I think so, yeah, because it seems like a natural fit, and the yes, so just measuring it out.
Yeah. Make sure it's metric, not English, right?
Exactly. No liters.
Unless you're measuring the alcohol, then it's fine.
All right, so we've got 2 ounces of the grapefruit juice, which we squeezed directly into the glass. Be careful, there might be some seeds in here.
That's okay.
Not filtered out.
All right.
2 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of lime juice, and a ½ ounce of triple sec. And
now, do you think there's really anything that comes close to the greatest movie ever made? Can you even have that discussion anymore with the number of movies that's been made, and it's so relative?
Yeah, I mean, that's like saying, you know, who's the greatest athlete?
Yeah.
It's anything when there's such a period of time, because you couldn't do some of the films that you do now without Citizen Kane.
Right.
I mean, some of the groundbreaking achievements from, you know, we were saying lighting and cinematography, just overall movie direction, set the stage for it was the litmus test for so long. So you take that influences other films, and it's really hard to say, what is the best film ever. So you almost have to put it in the context of its time, and I think for sure it was definitely, for its time, the best film.
And one of the most influential. We can easily say that
Sure.
on the films that followed. So,
Give this a shake. A little bit for you, sir.
ah, yes, it's delicious.
A little bit for me. A little bit there. All right.
All right.
Oh, well, here's to Citizen Kane.
What are they
Here's to
saying,
Mank.
Citizen Kane? Here's to love on my terms. Oh, I love that citrus.
That is good.
Really good.
You can say that about all our drinks, but
Let's run through the ingredients one more time. So, 2 ounces of grapefruit juice over ice, 2 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of Rose's lime juice.
or any lime juice.
Any lime juice. Could be fresh lime juice, like with the grapefruits, and then half ounce of triple sec.
Yep.
Delicious.
Put it all together, and you got the Rosebud.
Yeah, the Rosebud. And coming up, we're going to talk about Mank and give you our take.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right.
Oh, welcome back to Heilman and Haver. We have our cocktails in hand now. The Rosebud, aptly named for Citizen Kane. And we're actually not going to talk about Citizen Kane. We're going to talk about Mank.
Yeah.
But you couldn't have Mank without Citizen Kane.
And then that's obvious. You watch Mank, and the first thing you think of is it's obvious that the look and feel of the film was meant to mirror that of Citizen Kane. And I think David Fincher, the director, had mentioned that he'd like this film in an archive to sit next to Citizen Kane. Mm-hmm. You go find Citizen Kane, and you look right next to it as Mank, and you think they go together.
Right, and they actually shot this in black and white. There's not a color version of Mank anywhere. It was actually, the film was originally going to be David Fincher's next project after The Game back in '97, but he couldn't get clearance from the studios to do it in black and white the way he wanted. So it's cool. They actually even included things like cigarette burns, as if the reel-to-reel guys were swapping the film out and dropping ashes. So just fun little things like that. It definitely did have a period feel.
Sure.
You could definitely go from watching one to the next, and with the illusion that they were made simultaneously.
Yeah, and the pace of the film, and we'll talk about the soundtrack from Trent Reznor. Mm-hmm. It fit the period. It kept it moving. It was a quicker pace that you see with a lot of those older films. In fact, it's a bit of a faster pace than Citizen Kane was. Citizen Kane was a little more slow and deliberate, and especially in some of the more dramatic scenes. But it's definitely a period film, and they did a wonderful job with it. And I know they tried to, from some of the other visual effects, tried to mirror some of the things that they did in Citizen Kane, cinematography-wise.
The biggest thing that I noticed as far as the story goes was that it was done mostly in flashback, much like Citizen Kane. The opening, aside from the opening scene, which is in real time, and a few flashbacks during the movie to the present time, almost everything in Citizen Kane is in the past, starting from Kane as a boy all the way till the day that he dies, and then a few days after that. But same in Mank. A lot of time spent in the past, and not as much time. Obviously, there was this big controversy between Wells and Mankiewicz, and who was really responsible for the screenplay, who should have gotten the Oscar, who should have gotten the credit. And they honestly didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. It surprised me.
It surprised me too.
It was more about Mankiewicz as the screenwriter and his the whole reason behind why he wrote it. His what's the word?
Well, his issues,
inspiration, I suppose. Yeah, motivation.
Yeah.
So when you take on someone like William Randolph Hearst, I mean, obviously wasn't a biopic about Hearst. Citizen Kane was loosely based on Hearst, and Hearst tried to shut everything down because it was so close.
And that was another thing that I think I expected more of the tie-ins to Citizen Kane. Mm-hmm. More of the disputes between Orson Welles and Mank. More of the William Randolph Hearst trying to shut things down.
Right.
Death threats, all those sorts of things.
Trying to set him up with a minor in his hotel room. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. So I expected more of that, but I think I was pleasantly surprised because we knew about those things.
Mm-hmm.
The things that Mank showed from Herman Mankiewicz were things that we didn't necessarily know.
Right. I really liked it. Just overall, the film at large, because it really does transport you back to that time, between the 40s back into the 30s, and that's just a real cool age. I would have loved to have been there to experience a lot of that, and they did. I really liked what Variety said about it. It said, Variety wrote, "Mank is a tale of old Hollywood that's more steeped in old Hollywood. It's glamour, sleaze, layer cake hierarchies, corruption, glory, than just about any movie you've ever seen, and the effect is to lend it a dizzying time machine splendor." And even though I know it was shot and released in December of last year, shot last year, 2019, I believe.
They wrapped up right before the
COVID,
pandemic hit, and all the post-production was done during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's easy to suspend reality for a minute and go, this very easily could have been made in the 40s.
Yeah, and also, you talk about the period and having a glimpse into that system. The studio system is really put on display.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Willie B. Mayer. You've got his power over the studio and the actors and actresses and the crew. You have some scenes in there that really show you what the studio system is all about, and also the reaching into politics, which is kind of a subtext in the film.
Yeah, I almost felt like that was really the hinge of the movie, in that they explained what possessed Mankiewicz to go after someone like Hearst, fictionally, obviously, but someone who had been a friend, and someone that he had supported in the past and been invited to dinner parties and was friends with his paramour. That they spent a lot more time on that and his motivation, like we were saying earlier, than on the controversy parts. Mm-hmm. And any cinema fan, any movie buffs were probably aware of that already, so maybe that's why they did it this way. Fincher's dad, David Fincher, everybody should know that name. He was the director, and his father wrote the screenplay. His late father passed away several years ago. But yeah, I mean, music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They've worked with Fincher in the past. The music, honestly, may have been my favorite part of the film. It was so well done. It was so appropriate to the period. It put you there, but it also didn't detract from the dialogue. It was great writing.
It was there, mm-hmm. and it was subtle enough
that
you didn't notice it, right out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely was, as I talked about before, it kind of drove the pace of the film.
Right.
Interesting. You mentioned David Fincher's father, so journalist.
Mm-hmm.
He was a journalist, and he wrote this from the aspect of the journalism angle, because he would it almost read or almost played like a piece of journalism,
right.
The way it was reported. So it's the screenplay and the story have that kind of journalistic flair to it.
Well, and journalism plays a large role in Mank, mm-hmm. In that, what is the role of a journalist in Hearst? What is the role of the media? You see scenes of the media manipulating elections, and to the point that characters commit suicide over it, without any spoilers. The other thing, as far as the tie-in with where they filmed and when it was written, etc., you said all the shooting was pretty much wrapped up by December 2019, right before the pandemic stuff hit. They shot it at Kemper Campbell Ranch in Victorville, California, which is where Mankiewicz wrote Citizen Kane in 41. So it's all the same landscape. And apparently that area, that ranch, has not changed a whole lot since the 30s, so it really did transport you back into classic Hollywood.
Yeah, they were able to take advantage of a lot of the things. Glendale train station was
mm-hmm.
another one
mm-hmm.
that has not changed since that period of time, so that was shot on location. Additionally, things were filled in, using digital technology. We look at Hearst Mansion and considering that was shot on a small sound stage, and a lot of the parapets and things for the building were filled in digitally. And it was interesting to hear Fincher talk about it, that while it's new technology, it's the same process that they would have done then, except they would have done with matte paintings and backgrounds and things like that, except now it's digital.
And the painting itself, the art that went into Citizen Kane was something that set it apart and allowed them to do some pretty amazing things for its time. And I think that's where you also have a similarity between the two films. With 80 years in between the production, is that it's the camera work. Fincher's known for his camera work. The way that he follows his characters is very Fincher-esque. The way that this film was shot as well, it should look very familiar to any Fincher fan. But Wells, the way that he had carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. RKO gave him, you make the movie that you want to make, and that I think was really, maybe for the period, why people thought of it as the greatest movie ever made, is because it broke so many barriers as far as the way the technology was used. And I think you saw some of that in Mank too.
Yeah, interesting. Citizen Kane, 9 Academy Award nominations, 1 win for screenplay.
Yeah.
So it was definitely another one of those films that was ahead of its time and broke ground, but it wasn't hugely popular from a critical perspective right out of the gate. And from a popularity perspective, it took a little while for it to become recognized. And
a decade, I think. It was until the 50s that people started to realize.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with the power of the studio system and where this one fits in. And they go into that in the film nicely, I think.
Another surprise was, again, Orson Welles, not in the film a whole lot. He was played by Tom Burke, a British actor, excellent actor. I've seen him in things prior. The Cormoran Strike series, based on J.K. Rowling's novels. He did a great job, sounded like him. Apparently a lot of research and a lot of practice went into getting the Welles voice, because that's obviously something that people think of when they think of Welles. And of course he was a radio star prior to making Citizen Kane. Gary Oldman, I thought, did a great job. He played the young and old Mankiewicz quite well, quite convincingly. He's one of a few Oscar winners to play an Oscar winner, because obviously Mankiewicz and Welles got the Oscar for this. That was the only thing they won for Citizen Kane, believe it or not, was for the screenplay itself. So appropriate after all the work and controversy for old Herman to get the Oscar. So again, released in it was December 4th last year. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to see it. If not, go out and watch it. David Fincher director, writer Jack Fincher, his late father. The music, again, Trent Reznor of the Nine Inch Nails. Just out of left field when I read that, which I thought was so cool.
Well, I had that same reaction, and if you look at our review from the movie Soul, Disney Pixar movie Soul, they did the soundtrack for that, and I called out in the review there that the music, which was more jazz focused, this was more of kind of that big band, 30s, 40s kind of music.
Yeah, really swing.
But the music is part of the film. The music in Soul, I call it out as a character.
Absolutely. And I'd say the same for Mank as well.
For sure.
It's a very, very strong, has a strong presence in the movie. Amanda, I want to pronounce it right, Seyfried? Seyfried, okay. As Marion Davies. So that was Hearst Paramore. Hopefully you all know what that means. And quite an actress in her own right. A major superstar. But by the time that Citizen Kane was made, had retired and was really just kind of living as Hearst's girlfriend. And then we got Arliss Howard as Louis B. Mayer. I thought he did a great job. The Louis B. Mayer character was at times sympathetic and other times definitely kind of a, arch villain.
Yeah, I mean, and he was that studio head.
And kind of a stooge almost.
Yeah, because he's...
Hearst.
You follow the money, right? So, again, it plays the studio system really well and shows why, it's one of those things that had to go, that we had to change things.
And not to give too much away, but I'm not going to give anything away. I'm just going to say that especially for you Seattle folks who are watching, you local folks, the Upton Sinclair character, the actor portraying Upton Sinclair, you might recognize. So we'll toss that little Easter egg in there.
Yes, that was a nice little surprise.
Yeah, absolutely was.
But that was one of these things, and one of the things I want to talk to you about, what you're feeling is we're about to enter award season.
Right, yes.
And this is going to be probably the strangest award season I think we'll ever probably see in our lifetimes.
It's been delayed, I think, until April. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I know the Grammys have been delayed. I don't know if they've come up with a new date on the Oscars yet.
I'm thinking April because I did hear that there were some delays. But you're right. It adds to the strangeness.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, it might be a good thing in that we might be able to, through streaming services, see all the Best Picture nominees. Sometimes it's difficult when you've got the list of 5 to 10 Best Picture nominees to go see them before the before the awards show, right, because of work schedules and things like that, and get to the theater. But if they're all available via streaming, which they might be, this one surely is, then we might have a chance to see that. And I wanted to get your take on this, Matt. What you think, how you think Mank fits in from a Best Picture or any other category for that matter.
I think it would be a nice nod to just the history that is contained in this movie, and to Citizen Kane and to Wells and to Mankiewicz and Fincher and his father to give it screenplay. I also think you have some really great. I mean, Oldman's amazing, but I think you also have some really great supporting characters. One that I didn't get a chance to mention yet is Charles Dance, who plays William Randolph Hearst. Obviously, Charles Dance is best known probably as Tywin Lannister from the Game of Thrones. Just a really dynamic guy in whatever usually villainous role he plays, but almost sympathetic in this movie a little bit. He hasn't been portrayed that way, that the Hearst character in other movies about this. But definitely, I think you're going to see a Best Supporting Actress for Amanda Seyfried, for sure, as Marion Davies. She was pretty compelling in that role. Yeah. I thought hard to take your eyes off her.
Yeah, and I think it's a lock for a nomination for Best Picture.
Sure.
Simply because Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood.
Right. The awards process itself is
well. we look at La La Land. We look at The Artist. We look at Hugo. Movies about Hollywood have always played well, right, in Best Picture, and I think that, along with there's some, we talked about the political tie-ins, and there's some political tie-ins in the film without giving, again, anything really away, but you may already know this just from the context of the story, that are parallels to a lot of things going on today. And, and I think that, plus the fact that it's about Hollywood, to me, gives it a good place in the Best Picture category.
Yeah. A lot of humor in the movie. I found myself laughing a lot. Again, the music was phenomenal. I also think cinematography is probably going to be, it'll probably get a nod for that. The fact that it was shot in black and white, what was the last film you can think of that was shot in black and white that won an Oscar?
Well, probably The Artist.
The Artist, right.
Yeah,
right.
Best Picture. And I think as largely a silent film.
Yeah, and that's something we chatted about, I think, in one of our last, maybe our Christmas one, because I think it was The Apartment with Jack Lemmon was the prior, so the 1960s was the last time a black and white film, so that'd be kind of cool to see as well, but obviously there's going to be a lot of contenders. It's nice to see these straight to streaming movies get the recognition, though, because I think this is an excellent film, and you do, obviously it's not completely historically accurate, but you do learn a little about the history of the characters and the time period.
And it's enough to, if you want to go fill, it makes it intriguing enough to want to go fill in the blanks. You want to go learn more about Hearst. I mean, we all know a lot about Hearst, but maybe this is a different viewpoint of Hearst that makes you want to go dig into him a little bit. Or Louis B. Mayer, if you're not really that familiar with the old studio system and MGM and some of these other characters. I think it's does a really good job in kind of piquing your curiosity about some of these other characters.
Yeah, absolutely, and it will definitely drive people back to Citizen Kane. So I'm anxious to hear what our listeners' thoughts are on Mank, first and foremost. What do you think of that film? But also, what's your take on the whole controversy about Citizen Kane? Is it the greatest film ever made? That's a very, very tall order. And again, maybe for its era, maybe you do. I've read plenty of reviews where the reviewers and they're much more experienced than either of us say, yes, it is the greatest film of all time.
Yeah, and I think, next week we're going to have Matthew Turner, 20-year film critic,
right,
on the show. Yeah. And I think we may just ask him that question.
I think we would, and I think it'll also be interesting because he's from the UK, to get a perspective from across the pond on some of this American cinema and these claims, because you obviously have some amazing films that have been made in Great Britain. You've had some amazing films made in Europe, and a lot of the times they get passed over when it comes to these types of claims of best picture in history. But
because largely the Academy, it's political. You know, like anything else. I mean, sometimes something will come along. Parasite last year, for example, that'll maybe throw things, on its head a little bit. But it's largely a political machine.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of political machines, politics are definitely at the forefront of both these movies, and definitely worth a watch. And the great thing is, it's on Netflix. I'd love to be able to go see this in the theater. I think it would play very well on a big screen.
For sure.
The black and white would be really cool. So maybe there will be a re-release once things open back up. But.
Yeah, and I wonder if some of these movie houses. So we've got some movie houses locally, the Roxy, some of these other ones that have the ability to show some of these movies in different formats, whether it's a release from a studio or via digital content, if they'll be able to do things like that. So we'll see. I think these pictures that really belong on the big screen like this, I think should get I agree, they should get some more play. The interesting thing is you talked about black and white. It was filmed in black and white. There's something stark about black and white. And it's from photographs to film that just seems to pull in the emotion of a scene more than a colored version of a film.
Yeah, and again, the cinematography on this movie was reminiscent of Citizen Kane. It was definitely Fincher. If you didn't know who directed, you could probably tell from watching the way the camera moved and tracked with the characters. It makes you feel like you're there. It makes you feel like you're walking along with them, or you're standing as they. I mean, it's just it's very immersive, and I think when you add that to the black and white element, you get a very intimate film. And I think all film buffs would have loved, all film buffs alive today that aren't octogenarians would love to have lived during that time period and experienced that, where you could walk on a soundstage and bump into Louis B. Mayer or writers like Mankiewicz or even someone like Orson Welles. And watching this film is probably the closest we're going to get. So I say cheers to that. And I also say cheers to WWCA. We had a great time. We appreciate them inviting us down and allowing us to use our projector and watch this film. And thank you to Dan Estes, our resident film and theater buff, for watching along with us. And we had a great time. And also, you do not want to miss our upcoming Friday episode on the 15th of January. We're going to talk to J.J. Rusella. When it comes to technology and the technology of film and storytelling, this guy, very, very few can match this guy.
Super enthusiastic, super knowledgeable. I mean, he's got a large breadth of experience, theater, film. He's lately gotten into technology, VR, things like that. We're going to talk about all of it with him.
Yep. So definitely tune in. That's Friday, January 15th. J.J. Rusella joins us. And make sure to mix yourself one of these Rosebuds. And if you've never seen Citizen Kane, definitely make one of these or two. Sit down, and by the end of the movie, you ought to know what Rosebud means. So I'd say cheers to Citizen Kane, cheers to Mank, and cheers to WWCA. Thank you again.